So we are going to move now into the Q&A portion of today, and we have just as a reminder, if you missed at the beginning, because we're in webinar mode, there is not ability for people to unmute themselves, but we're encouraging you to put your questions ideally in the Q&A function, although I can see a few people have put questions in the chat function, and we will get to you in either way that you put your question in. So please start putting your questions in. So there was a question actually, Britt, about hello, it was from an anonymous attendee. I was wondering if Stonyfield was interested in changing the entire dairy industry, like Interface changed the entire business world. And I think you've really already spoken to that with your comments around Open Team and really trying to move the industry in a good direction, just as you really did years ago in proving to the dairy industry that organic was a viable business model. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Brett?
Well, Fiona, I think you did a good job of summing it up there. So Open Team is really intended to be used by any farm, not just dairy. I mean, we really are looking to put tools in the hands of farmers that can change agriculture everywhere in support of advancing soil health as a climate solution. And Open Team is the vehicle that we think we can use to do that. And looking at this other question that just popped up about, how we collect data for this, we use the Open Team platform. There's record keeping tools in there, and what we're doing with Open Team is creating interoperability with other tools that can then use that record keeping to evaluate a farm's greenhouse gas footprint and soil health and provide decision support back to that farm.
Yeah.
And we do intend to build a program over time that will pay our farmers for the additional carbon that they sequester. So we don't have that program in place today. We still purchase offsets from other entities, and we'd much rather purchase them from our farmers. So that's our goal.
Great, thank you so much. There's a question here really for both of you that is around culture. Let me see if I can just read this very quickly. How do you cultivate and encourage the culture that's needed to keep imagining the impossible? For instance, do you have regular training sessions, or do you schedule periodic brainstorming sessions that include employees from different organizations and departments, such as engineering, marketing, etc.? Or do these discussions happen more spontaneously? Maybe Mikhail, if you'd like to maybe go first, and then we'll come back to
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to do this, but I would say one of the things that we have very clearly is when you create clear goals and metrics and hold people account for them, that does a certain amount of the work for you. You still have to do the other parts in terms of really every day putting it into the culture and really having it led from the top. When we've seen it, and I had a middle part of my career where we were doing consulting, including we did consulting for Dairy Management Incorporated at one point, and actually got the dairy industry, the big bad whole thing to set carbon targets. That was our big win from that engagement. But what you see over and over again is when leaders talk about this, if they don't take it seriously, if they do not push it into the organization, it makes it really hard for everyone else in the organization to take it seriously. And especially if there's no accountability. So if you are we're always going to be held accountable in for-profit companies for the standard metrics of profitability. If no one is held to account for the sustainability metrics, they will be taken less seriously. You won't have innovation around that. Now we always are needing to meet more than one goal at the same time. We want it to be a financial win and a sustainability win. But I think we can't underestimate how clear it is, how important it is to set clear goals. Again, they can be goals that sound impossible. That'll get people innovating. Clear metrics, clear goals, and a culture of accountability around them where this actually matters. And it's not just lip service, and it's not just something we cut as soon as business is bad. That sends a very important message to the whole organization. And again, this is something you can also bring, as Britt was talking about, your suppliers. The same thing applies. If we say carbon matters, we will pay you if you produce less carbon, or, in a lot of cases, it's all good procurement work. We will buy more from you, and not necessarily more per unit, but we will buy more units. All of these normal business conversations have to start to have a sustainability portion that is very clear, that people can plan around and invest in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Britt, do you want to add anything to that? We've got a few other questions to come as well.
I don't have anything to add. I thought that was great.
All right, yeah, exactly. There's a couple of questions here around from Susan Kaplan. How do you engage customers and suppliers to use their voices for sustainable legislation? And from Jennifer Andrews, how can consumers hold companies accountable for their lobbying? What are the resources consumers can consult to learn what individual companies are lobbying for? I'd love it maybe if you could answer
Great
one or both
question.
of those questions. Yeah.
Because I do think this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of, are you really committed to sustainability, or are you committed to just looking green? And if you're a company where you really just have the 2% of your business that you put forward in California and Vermont and wherever else and say, oh, look, we're so green, and the rest of it's really not that green, when the legislation comes down to incent green, you're going to lobby against it, because you're going to lobby for that 98% of your business that really isn't green. And so I think it's a wonderful litmus test for a lot of businesses in this age of, that Ray and others helped usher in, frankly, that the new business norms, you have to have some kind of green story, even if it's just a story.
Mm-hmm.
Legislation really quickly cuts through that. We saw that in California, where all of the Floridan companies, oh, we were totally for recycling, until the state wants to actually have a law on it. We lobbied for it. One company stood aside, and all the rest of them lobbied against it. Now we're lobbying for, the government having to take into account carbon footprint in their purchasing of building products. So we'll see who lobbies for that and against that. But yeah. Accountability, very important.
Yeah, Britt, I know policy and legislation is definitely your world and your expertise.
Yeah, it's a big part of my work at Stonyfield, and a big part of the way that we are successful at Stonyfield is by aligning with like-minded businesses and building communities so that we can advocate together. We work with the Organic Trade Association to elevate the voice of the organic community, and really work with that organization to advance organic integrity. And that's a big part of our advocacy with that organization. And we also work with groups like BICEP, which is a group of businesses that has been advocating for climate change legislation for over a decade now. And I think, so there are like-minded communities of businesses that other businesses and customers and suppliers can support. I think, but in terms of how we hold companies accountable when they're not participating in these communities voluntarily, I think that there's a couple of different ways, but it's an area where we need more work. Like, we need to figure this out. But there is, there's certainly the opportunity for shareholders to be active on this and push companies to be transparent about what they are lobbying for, and push companies to lobby for the right things. And then there's visibility into campaign donations. So you can go and look and see who companies have donated funds to. And that can provide you with some of the picture as well. It's not an entirely accurate way of getting at what's happening, but it does provide a window, and it does give you as a consumer an opportunity to say, hey, why is this company donating to that candidate when that candidate is taking this position that's so problematic, and raise their voice in that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Ultimately, one of the big challenges is scale. And one of the things business could be doing is, and that is why the tool of business becomes important, is to help things scale. But government can also help things scale. And if we really want to change the business ecosystem at scale, legislation is one of the things that can enable that. Yeah. And I think more enlightened businesses will understand that even if the legislation doesn't look good for your profitability today, if you know what's coming, if it's a consistent rule, you can invest in that direction. You can have some predictability. And I think that even the chemical industry, with the recent reform of TSCA, imperfect though it is, finally realized that being regulated by 60 different entities Walmart, the state of California, state of Washington, you know, all of them separately with a different idea is actually worse than federal legislation. And so it's not until they feel the pain of the alternate approach that often they will let their guard down and allow things to pass. So I think that's where we're at with carbon. And frankly, we just have to do everything we can to pile on the pressure. And finally, they'll realize that federal legislation is actually better than the alternative of all these other people setting standards in all these different ways. You know, they learned that on e-waste. There are, I think, 38 different laws on e-waste because federal government refused to pass it. The electronic companies really wish they hadn't lobbied against federal legislation on e-waste now, I bet.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah,
go ahead, Brett.
For all of the students who are listening and thinking about going into careers in business that would somehow touch on sustainability, I think that one of the other things that is overlooked in this area is just communication within businesses about this. And I run into this all the time in the sustainable food world, where I will talk to folks who are working on the agricultural side of a large manufacturer and improving agricultural sustainability, and they don't engage at all with what's happening on the government affairs side of that company. So within companies, there is a lot of room to advance this dialogue as well and get the company to think in a more systems-oriented way about how what they are doing in one area could be supported or advanced by work in another.
Well, and even more so, some people essentially, you know, outsource their government affairs to the industry association for their industry, which by their nature tends to defend the lowest common denominator within your industry and resist change. And so you really don't know what's going on. You really might not be supporting some change that's needed because industry associations just reflexively tend to fight change, even if some of their member organizations might know better.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it strikes me that, you know, so much of what you're both talking about today is just, you know, a very different way of doing business, right? I mean, I think in business schools for decades, you know, we've been teaching models of competition and less about models of collaboration. And, you know, both of you have talked about kind of bold leadership, things that you're doing to advance your company, but ultimately things that you hope will transform your respective industries, and that you're sharing that knowledge and you're collaborating with other companies, often traditionally that would be your competitors. And I just wanted to sort of, you know, kind of call that out as really important kinds of leadership and the kind of leadership that we need. I want to get to a question from Eric Berry, because I think it really addresses also an elephant in the room. That perhaps is a barrier to this kind of, you know, bold leadership. Eric's question is really around sort of the financial aspect of products like your carbon negative carpet products. And he says, do you think the average buyer will be attracted to the product, or is it mainly targeted towards only companies, clients with larger budgets and agendas for sustainable improvement? And I think the same for you, Britt. I'd love it if you could both sort of address kind of the business, the financial ROI. I mean, obviously the leadership you're taking is because of action on climate, but I'd love just to hear a little bit about sort of the financial aspects of how this is also good for business.
I think for us, it's very clear, and it's interesting. One of these questions we have to answer periodically is, you know, why aren't you a B Corp like Stonyfield? And I think it goes to the fundamental fact that part of our theory of change, and we are that rare for-profit publicly traded company that really does have a theory of change that's usually reserved for nonprofit advocacy groups, is that if we can show as a for-profit publicly traded company, we can literally be sued if we do something that is not return value to shareholders. If we can do it, what's your excuse? It's just better business. So the carbon negative products aren't going to be premium products. The whole idea is scale. You know, they're going to initially have very little yarn on them. So there'll be a look not everyone will want. So there will be particular limitations, especially initially. When we first did recycled content yarn, initially it had a very limited color palette. Now we can do all the colors. But it's just a matter of time. But our model has always been It has to be something that is not just a niche product that can be sold broadly, that can make us more profitable and show the world that just if only thing they're measuring is profitability, we're still better. And that really is our theory of change, is that's how we interest all the people that haven't yet understood ethically the dimensions of sustainability. Let's have you understand the profitability of sustainability, then maybe you'll catch on.
Yeah, beautifully said. Thank you, Mikhail. Britt?
I'll just add that there are a lot of opportunities to reduce your environmental impact as a business that are consistent with financial metrics, especially around things like energy efficiency, transitioning to renewables where there may be an upfront investment, but quite a solid payback on that investment. And things like reducing food waste in our plant. You know, every drop of milk that we save is a drop of milk that we've paid for that is getting used instead of going down the drain. So reducing food waste is another area for a food manufacturer that has really solid payback. There are activities that are going to cost money, that we have to be real when we talk about sustainable business goals, that they're not all going to be financially friendly goals. But then the other questions come into play. How do you improve consumer loyalty and retain your consumers by over time demonstrated that you're committed over the long haul to improving sustainability? And we know that a lot of folks who are loyal to Stonyfield are loyal because of the things that we do to support the farming community and advance sustainability. So there are other ways that we create value.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're getting close to time, so I want to just say a few things in closing. First of all, thank you to both of you, Britt and Mikhail, incredible speakers, incredible companies that you represent, and also to our co-hosts for this event today. On this 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and one when we're also living through a global health crisis, we're reminded, I think, so much of the interconnectedness of our world and of these issues, the need to find solutions that build a stronger future for all. So we really encourage you to think this week about the power of your agency as individual change makers, and that we have collectively as a society. How can we focus on the change that we want to see in the world? I think many people are starting to say we are at a critical juncture. And one thing is clear, that we need to work together. We're at a moment when profound change is perhaps finally possible. We know we need to get the future right. We definitely need governments, as Britt and Mikhail have said, we need to get governments and nonprofits, certainly universities included in that, to step up and do their part. But the corporate sector has a vital role to play. As Mikhail said, the scale of business is really very important in addressing the climate crisis. Corporations like Interface and Stonyfield are showing how we can redesign business models, and in the process fundamentally redesign our economy so that the future is one that is both more equitable and more sustainable, where people and planet both thrive. At UNH, we recognize that the need for effective change makers is now more than ever. And so we're really committed over the next several decades to graduating thousands of students, young leaders who have the confidence and competence gained through real world experience in sustainability to create change for the good of all. In the last few minutes, I'd love just to tell you a little bit about some of the ways that we're bringing this vision of Changemaker education to life at UNH and some of the programs that distinguish UNH's sustainability education. When I first met Mikhail Davis about a year ago, he was speaking at another conference, and a student asked him, if I want to be a leader in sustainability, what should I major in? And Mikhail's answer was very simple. He said, major in anything you like, but dual major in sustainability. And I was really grateful to that comment that you made, Mikhail, because I think it really speaks to why at UNH we have a dual major in sustainability. So in addition to the extensive offerings through courses and majors and minors in all of UNH's wonderful colleges, UNH has a fast-growing dual major in sustainability, and it offers a really excellent pathway for students to build on that disciplinary education with the interdisciplinary skills and knowledge needed to create a more sustainable future. And what's great about it is that students from any UNH college or major compare the sustainability dual major with their primary major. But we also have other programs, curricula and co-curricula. Our exciting Semester in the City program that we offer in partnership with the College for Social Innovation, our nonprofit partner in Boston, where students spend a whole semester earning credit while interning at mission-driven organizations. We offer our B Impact Clinic, as you've heard a little bit about certified B Corps today, and this is where we train our students in the B Impact assessment and partner them with local and regional and even national companies to take those companies through the assessment and in some cases become B Corp certified. We have wonderful summer programs, which I'm proud to say are still happening this year, even though they will most likely be fully remote. We are placing students who are getting paid internships and will be leading sustainability projects around the region and around the country. And lastly, in the fall, we'll be going into our 8th year of our Social Venture Innovation Challenge, which we encourage you to check out. So thank you, all of you, for being here today. Again, the world needs change makers now more than ever. We are happy to have been able to honor this 50th anniversary of Earth Day, particularly by being joined by Britt and Mikhail representing Stonyfield and Interface, two of the companies that really are showing that bold action is not only needed, but very possible. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again at one of our Changemaker Speaker Series in the fall.
Thanks so much.
Thanks everyone. Have a great day.